Lithuanians used to pass from generation to generation the horrible memories of those night deportations. In the period of 1941 to 52, about 283,000 Lithuanian citizens were deported to Gulag hard labor prison camps by the Stalin authorities. Peasants and workers, farmers and industrialists were being deported. So were the representatives of Lithuania's intellectual community, teachers and clergymen, scholars and artists, officers and administrators. In the guerrilla war of 1944 to 53, we lost a large part of our brightest people. Lithuania's battle for its freedom was bloody, but it echoed throughout the world, telling about the forcible occupation of the country. It seems that the less dramatic decades after Stalin's death should have dimmed our memory, but that was not the case. The world was again reminded of an unconquered country called Lithuania in May 1972 by the self-immolation of Romas Kalanta in Kaunas. After the death of Leonid Brezhnev, in-house squabbles began among Moscow's top officials. Soviet rulers started replacing one another in such a quick succession that soon in the Soviet Union, which was counting its time by 5-year plans, jokes started going around that we were implementing a 5-year plan of pompous funerals. The brief mission of KGB chief Andropov was extremely memorable in its shortness. Our generation could see how easily we might have relapsed into the purgatory of Stalin and Beria. No permission or excuse was necessary for police to check people in the streets or cinema theaters, or to find out whether they were away from their offices during working hours. That is why Mikhail Gorbachev, who was elected after him, seemed to be an alien on planet Earth, and all of us were quite suspicious of his perestroika slogans and assurances of democracy. Those assurances seemed too fragile, dependent on a single person in the Soviet state. We needed 2.5 more years before the first tentative hope to be independent was rekindled again in our hearts. Our dissidents were the first to voice that hope. On the 23rd of August 1987, Antanas Terleckas, Nijolė Sadūnaitė and Robertas Grigas demanded freedom for Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia by the monument to poet Adam Mickiewicz in Vilnius. The year 1988 came. I remember that time in summer when on the 3rd of June, 35 men and women of superb courage established the Lithuanian reform movement, Sąjūdis. The time, unforgettable for all of us, commenced. One can hardly expect to be given another chance in his life to feel such trust in one's nation and infinite hope of independence arising from the very depth of our hearts. The national emblem, the flag and anthem found their way back into our everyday life. We looked back on our recent history, started sorting things out and revealing the truth. The day of the restoration of statehood, 16th of February, was reinstated as a public holiday, and we told the whole world about the clandestine parceling of Lithuania by Stalin and Hitler on the 23rd of August 1939. The Nazi-Soviet secret protocols that were unveiled dispelled the Soviet myth that Lithuania joined the Soviet Union after a popular revolution. Lithuania and the world experienced unspeakable horror when reading Sąjūdžio žinios and Atgimimas newspapers. They published articles about the massacres at Kaunas, Rainiai, Pravieniškės and Tuskulėnai committed by the Soviet troops, also about mass deportations and the inferno of the Gulag camps. The Lithuanian drive for freedom, led by the Sąjūdis, shook the world. The world saw an unprecedented unity of nations as well as their sacrifice and determination. The world saw rallies attended by hundreds of thousands of people. The Baltic Way, the infinite faith of the nation in the leaders of the Independence Road, Vytautas Landsbergis and Algirdas Brazauskas. In October, the first Sąjūdis Congress was convened. For 2 days and nights, Lithuania lived in unison with its work. We elected our government, the Seimas and its chairman, Vytautas Landsbergis, adopted the regulations of the program. Its keynote was reconstruction of openness, democracy, and the sovereign state of Lithuania. The Congress made a stand against the sovereignty of Lithuania within the Soviet Union, which was proposed by the then Lithuanian government. We declared ourselves to be an opposition to the Lithuanian Communist Party and demanded unconditional independence for Lithuania. Every participant of the Congress felt profound satisfaction when Algirdas Brazauskas announced the return of the Vilnius Cathedral to the Lithuanian Catholic Church. At that time, in 1988, we were still inmates in the prison of nations of the late 20th century, which bore that high-sounding name of the Union of Independent States. Lithuania was filled with Russian troops. The political situation of that time called for a tactics of fight based on openness and lawfulness. When at the end of December, nomination of candidates for the Congress of the People's Deputies of the Soviet Union commenced, Sąjūdis decided to participate. Their victory exceeded all expectations. 32 out of the 42 elected candidates were Sąjūdis people. A special declaration of the Seimas, the Lithuanian parliament, empowered the deputies to seek the restoration of Lithuanian statehood in the Congress of the USSR. The invincible unity of the Lithuanian nation helped us reach this goal. Prior to 1990, we made provisions in our laws related to the unlawful annexation of Lithuania in 1940. We reinstated the national Lithuanian flag and the anthem, Vincas Kudirka's national song. The Lithuanian became the state official language, and the 16th of February became a national holiday. We did away with the greatest injustice. Political prisoners and deportees were rehabilitated. When in 1989 the Supreme Council of Lithuania proclaimed the precedence of laws of the Republic over those of the Union, we had the sensation of having approached the door to independence. I remember a major test of our public spirit when in the summer of 1989 we refused to allow our young people to be conscripted to the Soviet army. We succeeded in this test. All institutions took a stand to defend young people. Meanwhile, our higher education establishments initiated an unprecedented campaign. All the willing young people were granted the possibility to study and were thus saved from the arbitrariness of military authorities. The crystal-clear attitude of Lithuanian citizens towards independence had a certain impact on the then communists as well. In late 1989, the Lithuanian Communist Party seceded from the All-Union Party. Following the revocation of Articles 6 and 7 of the Soviet Constitution, all the existing Lithuanian parties and organizations were granted the possibility of unrestricted actions. That was the situation of early 1990. On the 24th of February, the first free and democratic elections to the Supreme Council of Lithuania were held. The advocates of Lithuanian independence, Sąjūdis candidates, had their glorious moment of triumph. The Lithuanian people elected them in an absolute majority of constituencies. The 50-year-long Soviet occupation, mass deportations and massacres, physical and psychological constraints brought no results. Confronted with the nation's longing for freedom and traditional Christian values, the postulates concocted by modern prophets and imposed as values turned out to be false. Lithuania was prepared for the act of independence.